Hi, I'm Nathan Burmester, and this is a brief overview of 6 of my favorite natural areas in the great state of Minnesota, which is where I'm from. The tour covers 4 state parks, a wilderness area, and an eagle refuge, and I'm also going to highlight a couple of my favorite spots along the way. So our tour starts at Temperance River State Park, which as we zoom in here you'll see is on the north shore of Lake Superior, and it's actually a really small state park, but it has an amazing trail that starts on the shore of Lake Superior and winds its way uphill beside Temperance River. And the highlight of the trail is a waterfall called Hidden Falls, which is a picture of it here. And I actually took this picture, and it's one of my favorite pictures I've ever taken. But to kind of give you a better idea of where I was when I took this picture, it's best to zoom in on it kind of in a 3D fashion here. So if we zoom into the edge of the Lake Superior here, you can see up the canyon there, and that's where the trail starts. And as you move up, there's actually a small little waterfall under the bridge, but then you come around this corner here, and you end at this little pond, and that's where the canyon starts, and the waterfall is up that canyon. So another cool thing I like about this state park is actually the campground, which as we zoom back out here, you'll see in that yellow polygon. And there's actually 2 campgrounds at the state park, one just north of the river and this little one on the south side. And this one on the south side is my favorite because there's a couple sites that are right on Lake Superior, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And they're also far enough away from the road, they don't get any road noise, it's a pretty good spot. And it's one of my favorite car camping sites in Minnesota. Next, our tour will take us all the way across the state to one of the largest state parks in the Minnesota state park system, and that is Itasca State Park. Now, this state park is most well known as the headwaters of the Mississippi, and it's just right of the little icon there. You see that little sandy area? That is where the Mississippi River comes out of the north side of Itasca Lake, or Lake Itasca, and here is an image of it, so that's the lake in the background and those rocks. That is the start of the mighty Mississippi River. And up on the upper left there you can see the visitor center to the park. And if we zoom out you can see Lake Itasca is actually kind of an upside down Y shape, and it's a pretty large lake. The other thing I really like about this park, as I mentioned, it is a really big park, and if you go way down to the south in this red polygon site is a great place to find wolves. And I have done quite a bit of hiking here, especially over the winter when all these lakes freeze over. You can walk across the lakes, and there's at least 2 different wolf packs that roam around in this area, and you can actually see wild wolves just running around. So it's a really cool spot. Our next spot on the tour is way down on the south side of Minnesota, south of Minneapolis and St. Paul, and it's this little tiny town called Wabasha, Minnesota. And it's actually right on the border of Wisconsin and Minnesota. So that is the Mississippi River running through there, that blue line. And this land cover type map is a good way of looking at this area because, well, what makes Wabasha so amazing and one of my favorite spots in Minnesota is the fact that it is the national eagle capital of, well, I guess the eagle capital of the U.S. And as you can see here is a picture. During the winter, hundreds of eagles, bald eagles, and golden eagles all winter here. So it's a really neat spot to see some wildlife. And the reason they all come here is best shown by this land cover map. So as you can see, the dark blue of the river coming on from the left side there from the west, all of that wide river gets compressed down to that little narrow channel as that other smaller river comes, that light blue comes from the north. And so all that water getting shunted down to such a small space increases the speed, which means it doesn't freeze during the winter. And there's also a ton of fish here. So open water, tons of food, equals tons of bald eagles during the winter. So it is a really cool spot. The next area on our tour is going way back up north again to the Boundary Waters canoe area. Now this spot is known as the canoe spot in Minnesota, and Minnesota is well known for its canoeing to start off, so it's a pretty impressive site. And as you can see, there are thousands of lakes here, hundreds of streams, and it is just a canoeing dream. Lots of backcountry camping. I think there's over 200 sites in the area, maybe even more than that. It's a really cool spot, and what makes it really special is it's even more isolated than it looks. There is, to the east and the south is the Superior National Forest, which is thousands of acres, and Boundary Waters is over 1,000,000 acres itself, and then to the north and to the west it's bordered by Voyageurs National Park. So it's an extremely isolated spot. You can see the only town anywhere nearby is the town of Ely, and that is just a tiny town to start with. So it is you're really out there when you're camping here, and it's just a great place. You don't hear any airplanes or anything. It's beautiful. Another one of my favorite parks is Glendalough State Park, and this one is well off the map. Even most Minnesotans don't know about it, and that's partially because it is such a tiny park. But what's really cool about it is it has some of the best tallgrass prairie in the state. It's full of a whole bunch of rare plants, as well as some rare life or wildlife that's not found anywhere else, or not found in too many places, and that includes badgers and prairie chickens. There's also a really neat section of oak savanna ecosystem in this park, so it is a really cool place, and both those lakes are just full of fish. It's a fisherman's dream. It's really cool. The last place I'd like to take us on our Natural Areas of Minnesota tour is not too far away, and it's Maplewood State Park. Now, this state park is also not too well known, but it's interesting how close it is to Glendalough. It has a completely different flavor. So you can see here there's tons of tiny lakes, and in between those tiny lakes is a whole bunch of terrain. There's pretty large hills actually in between them, and so you get all this terrain. It's all from glaciers. So the glaciers carved out all these little lakes, deposited all the sediment to make the mounds, the little hills, and so it's a really diverse ecosystem, lots of cool wildlife, and all those wooded areas there are heavily maples. So during the fall you get all kinds of yellows and reds, and it's just a really pretty place during the winter, or well, during the fall, I guess. These are some of my favorite places in the state. So if you have never been to Minnesota, I can't recommend it enough.